My parents told everyone I was a failure. At my brother's engagement dinner, I sat quietly. Then his fiancée looked at me and said, "Wait, you're Michael Carter?" The whole room went silent. Even my dad didn't say a word. Hi, Reddit. I never planned to go to my brother's engagement dinner. In fact, I wasn't even supposed to be invited. For years, my family saw me as the black sheep, the one who dropped out, the one who never measured up. I got used to being left out of everything: weddings, birthdays, even holidays. But then my cousin Natalie sent me a last-minute invite. She wrote, "You should see this for yourself." That got me curious. The dinner was at a fancy restaurant, the kind my parents couldn't afford. That told me right away that Mark, my perfect younger brother, was doing great. He always had straight A's, scholarships, and fancy internships. Our parents praised him constantly. When we were kids, they filled the living room with his awards. Every time I messed up, it looked even worse next to how perfect he seemed. So I walked in wearing a plain button-down and slacks, feeling completely out of place. No one expected me. No one even looked up. I had to tap my mother on the shoulder just for her to blink in recognition. "Michael," she said flatly, as if I were some inconvenient ghost. I nodded. I just wanted to congratulate Mark. She didn't smile. Neither did Dad. Mark looked vaguely uncomfortable but managed a quick, tight nod in return. No hug, no welcome. I took a seat at the edge of the long table, farthest from the couple, farthest from the spotlight. I noticed the empty seat beside me, odd, considering it was a full house, about 30 people, most of whom I didn't know, extended family, coworkers, a few friends. I barely touched the food. Instead, I watched my parents gush over Mark's achievements like a broken record. My dad told the same story twice about how Mark bought them a new dishwasher. My mom repeated how proud she was that Mark had proposed with a 2-carat diamond. Every sentence felt like a quiet jab. This is what success looks like. And then, midway through dessert, the last guest arrived. She was stunning, not just in the obvious way, but in the way she carried herself, confident, poised, her long coat draped over her shoulders, heels clicking softly on the hardwood as she apologized for being late. Mark stood to greet her. "Babe, we thought you weren't coming." "Sorry, last-minute work call," she said with a laugh. Her eyes scanned the table as she took off her coat. When her gaze landed on me, she froze. There was a moment, barely a second, but it was unmistakable. Her expression shifted from casual to puzzled, then to something deeper, recognition. She walked slowly toward the empty seat next to mine and sat down carefully, eyes never leaving me. Then, in a quiet voice meant only for me, she leaned in. "Wait, you're Michael Carter?" I turned to her, taken aback. I hadn't introduced myself. No one had. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Do I know you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked back toward Mark, then at my parents, who were too deep in conversation to notice us. "I'm Rachel," she said. "Rachel Langston. We met once years ago at a tech summit in San Diego. You gave a talk on adaptive AI applications. You worked at Nova Synth, right?" I nearly dropped my fork. That part of my life had been kept quiet, especially around my family. They knew nothing about my work. They assumed I'd failed out of college and gone off the grid. They never bothered to ask why I didn't show up to family events. The truth was, I'd been working under a strict NDA for one of the most advanced AI development firms on the West Coast. When I left, I took a massive buyout and started my own small venture. I was quiet about it on purpose. I wanted space from them. They'd never supported me, never believed in me. Why share my success? "You remember that?" I asked, stunned. Rachel nodded, her voice still low. "I was a research intern back then. Your talk completely changed the direction of my thesis. I even tried to reach out, but you kind of disappeared." I looked around. My dad had paused mid-sentence. My mother's eyes had locked on Rachel. She must have heard my name, Michael Carter. My dad repeated it louder now. The table fell silent. My uncle set down his wine glass. My aunt looked from me to Rachel. Mark's face was stone. Rachel turned to them, oblivious to the tension. "You didn't tell me your brother was Michael Carter." There was silence, thick, buzzing silence, before my mother let out a forced laugh. "Oh, Rachel, you must be thinking of someone else. Or, Michael, well, he's had some hard times. He dropped out of college, spends most of his time doing odd jobs. Isn't that right?" I blinked slowly. There, it was the narrative they'd told everyone. Rachel frowned. "That's not what I heard. Michael Carter from Nova Synth is kind of a legend in my field, one of the youngest contributors to adaptive neural language tech." "Wait, are you saying that's not him?" Before anyone could answer, I pulled out my phone. I opened my LinkedIn and handed it to her. She scanned it, her eyes widened. Holy crap, this is you. My father cleared his throat, but he had nothing to say. I stood up slowly. Yeah, I said, that's me. The same Michael you all decided to write off. The same one who missed Christmases, birthdays, weddings, and not one of you ever called to ask why. I looked at Mark. Congratulations on your engagement. I turned to Rachel. Nice seeing you again. You're going to make a wonderful addition to the family, assuming you're okay with people who lie through their teeth. I started walking away, and behind me voices erupted. I heard my mom call my name. Someone shouted, wait, but I didn't. I stepped out into the cold night, heart pounding. I should have felt angry, but I didn't. I felt free, but what I didn't expect, as I reached the parking lot, was the sound of hurried footsteps behind me. Michael, wait. I turned. It was Rachel, and the look in her eyes told me this night was far from over. I turned back to her in the parking lot, heels clacking against the pavement, breathless but determined, like someone who'd just been hit with too many truths at once and wasn't ready to walk away from any of them. Michael, she said again, slower this time. I had no idea. None of them ever said anything about what you actually did. I gave her a weak smile. Yeah, they made sure of that. My parents didn't just ignore what I did, they rewrote it, turned me into a cautionary tale to make Mark look better. Rachel crossed her arms, shivering slightly in the cold. Is that why you disappeared from everything? I nodded. Part of it. I didn't leave because I failed. I left because I succeeded, and they couldn't handle that it wasn't the path they wanted for me. No degree, no handholding, just raw effort and risks that didn't fit their version of me. We stood in silence for a moment, the distant hum of traffic filling the space between us. Then she asked the question I didn't expect. Would you come back in, please, just for a few minutes? I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I don't want to be part of whatever charade is going on in there, she said firmly, and I think you deserve to be heard, not just tolerated. I let out a soft laugh. You really want me to go back in there and lecture a table full of people who decided I didn't exist the moment I stopped making sense to them? No, she said. I want you to walk in as yourself, not the version they made up. You already shook the room just by existing. I want to see what happens when you tell your side. I considered it. Every part of me wanted to walk away and never look back, but another part, the one that spent years carrying their silence like a weight, wanted to set it down for good. All right, I said, let's go ruin dessert. When we walked back in together, the room hadn't recovered. My parents were whispering furiously. Mark stood near the bar, staring at his drink. Everyone else had fallen into awkward small talk, pretending nothing had happened. Rachel cleared her throat. Everyone, she said loudly. The room turned toward her. She looked at me, nodded once, then stepped aside. I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence did the work for me. I never asked to be the center of anything tonight. I began. I came to say congratulations. I thought I'd sit quietly, smile, eat dinner, and leave, but apparently, even my silence is too loud for this family. My mother opened her mouth, but I cut her off with a glance. You all wrote me off years ago, and I let you because it was easier than fighting to be heard. But here's the truth. I didn't drop out because I couldn't handle school. I dropped out because I got an offer from Nova Synth after an AI competition, the kind of offer people dream of. I worked there for 5 years and contributed to breakthroughs you probably read about in headlines you never connected to me. I've since built my own company. I'm doing well, more than well. A few guests exchanged glances. My uncle whispered something to my aunt, who was now fully alert. My father stiffened. Why didn't you ever tell us? He asked. I gave him a long look. Because you never asked. You just assumed. You filled in the blanks with whatever suited your story. Mark finally spoke up. You always made everything about you, Michael. I turned to him, surprised. Really? I was the one missing from every family photo for the last 10 years. You had every holiday, every moment. You got the house, the pride, the spotlight, and still you think I made it about me? He shrugged. You didn't make an effort. I stared at him. I made the effort. You just didn't want it. I sent cards, left voicemails. Remember when Mom had surgery 5 years ago? I flew out to see her. She told the nurses I was a friend visiting from work because she didn't want them to know I was her son. That was the moment I gave up trying. A hush fell over the room. My mom looked like she'd swallowed glass. My dad's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Rachel stepped forward again. I don't care what stories you've been told, but the man I met years ago changed the way I think. And tonight, I watched a room full of people try to bury that brilliance just because they didn't understand it. She turned to Mark. If you lied about your own brother, what else did you lie about? He looked stunned. What are you talking about? You told me he moved away after he got arrested for stealing from a client, that he was ashamed and left the family in ruins. That's what you said at brunch with your friends. The blood drained from Mark's face. My mom shot him a warning glance. Rachel looked around the room. If this is how this family operates, I'm not sure I belong here. Then she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. You're the only one here I actually trust. It hit me like a sledgehammer. I didn't say anything else. I walked out again. This time I wasn't stopped. Rachel caught up with me in the hallway. Where are you going? She asked. Home, I said. Back to the life I built on my own, without needing their approval. She smiled. Can I come with you? I stared at her. Are you serious? I've been serious since I found out you were that Michael Carter, she said, and even more serious when I saw your parents' faces. We walked outside together. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family failure or the forgotten son. I felt like someone who didn't need to prove anything anymore, someone finally seen for who he really is.